And now from Washington, the Inside Scoop. All the news the government does not want you to hear. Now, here's your host on the Inside Scoop, Mark Levine.
Good evening, America. Welcome to the Inside Scoop, perhaps the only news channel left in America where we care more about what goes on in Washington than what goes on with Britney Spears' haircut. Welcome to the Britney
And now
Free
from
Zone.
Washington,
So on this Britney Free Zone, we have, of course, Congress met yesterday in the Senate, and the Senate did a rare Saturday session to discuss whether or not we should debate whether or not George Bush should escalate the war in Iraq. The Democrats voted to debate the issue. The Republicans filibustered and apparently did not want to allow the majority who voted for the Democratic majority to have a say in the issue. Meanwhile, abroad, the other two members of George Bush's axis of evil have interesting stories this week, both in agreement with North Korea that is very similar to the one Clinton signed 10 years ago, maybe a little worse, and Iran, which, no surprise, is supplying weapons to Shiite death squads in Iraq. Closer at home, we have the Scooter Libby trial, which official Washington is carefully watching on their televisions, wondering how it is that the president tries to manipulate the press, sort of peeling back the curtain to see what happens there. And at the same time, the political firings of a number of attorney generals across the nation, U.S. attorneys, I should say, prosecutors, fired because they dared to prosecute Republicans. To discuss all of these issues, I invite you to join me. The toll-free number is 888-488-MARK. All you have to do is call in, agree or disagree. I want to hear from you. One person who generally disagrees with me, and therefore I'm glad he's right here sitting by my side, is Mike Lane. He is a Republican strategist, the president of Intelligence Strategies, and a frequent guest here on the Inside Scoop. Welcome, Mike.
Mark, it's good to be back. I'm happy that we have declared a Britney free zone tonight, but I certainly hope that it's not an Anna Nicole free zone. I think that story is way too important to not be talked about.
Admittedly so, but we did that last week. So let's focus this week on Congress and the non-binding resolution. Now, if the Republicans are not willing to even debate whether or not George Bush's surge, his escalation, is a good idea, what are they ever going to do when 3 weeks from now they need money from the Democratic majority for George Bush to continue the war in Iraq? How are they ever going to get that money from the Democrats if they won't agree to even debate the issue?
Well, the Democrats will do what they want to do. They control the Congress. They control the Senate. They can put anything up they want to put up, and they can debate it, and they can do whatever they want. In the case of the non-binding resolution, whatever that's supposed to be, that the Senate took up last Saturday on an extraordinary Saturday session and was unable to come to agreement, the only thing that the Democrats have to do is agree to allow Republican amendments to that resolution, and there will be 100% of Republicans who will support cloture and bringing it to a vote. You don't even have to adopt their amendment. You just have to give them the chance to offer the amendment. But yet Harry Reid, for some reason, seems to think that having full and open debate is a bad thing in Washington these days. Having closed debate where only his ideas get to be voted on is the way it is. You know, when Harry opens up and plays fair, he'll get his vote. You
know, the irony is astounding that your party, which for 12 years in the House, for 6 years in the Senate, 4 years, I should say, in the Senate, routinely did not allow the Democrats to amend anything. Routinely, the discussion of the war was given less time. Deciding whether to go to war, members were given less time than the discussion on the non-binding resolution in the House. As you know, every member of the House got 5 minutes to talk on this resolution, which did pass in a bipartisan majority. And the one in the Senate, you know, would also pass in a bipartisan majority. But the Republicans who argue, hey, you know, we want the nuclear option if we have to. We don't believe in the filibuster when they're in the minority. They sure love the filibuster, don't they?
As did the Democrats. You know, the Democrats are now complaining that they can't get something up for a vote when they set the record in terms of filibusters for the last 6 years, keeping the Republicans from getting things up for a vote too. Let's face it, the filibuster is a wonderful tool for the minority. It's a frustrating tool for the majority, and your position on whether a filibuster is good or bad can switch with whether or not you're in power or out of power. In this particular case, I'll freely admit, I argued there were times when I thought the Democrats abused the filibuster too much, wouldn't let important things come to a vote. In this case, it's just the principle of amendments. Give the Republicans a chance to say that they support the troops and will not cut the funding out from underneath them when they're in harm's way, and you'll get your vote.
Well, you know what? It's going to happen because 3 weeks from now, it's not going to be a matter of the Republicans stopping debate on the war, which is what they're doing now, but actually voting on whether to continue to fund this war. And Bush needs the Democrats. This isn't something like a resolution that he can veto.
Right.
If he doesn't get the money, if he doesn't get 51 members of the Senate and the majority of the House, he can't continue this war. So instead of playing games with, we're not even going to debate this issue and so forth, they're going to have to really convince the Democrats to move forward. Otherwise, if they don't play ball, they won't get their funding.
Mark, I don't think the Senate is ready to cut the funds off. I could be wrong. I could be counting the heads wrong. But I don't think the Senate is ready to cut the funds off for the troops and not appropriate the money in a clean bill the way they need to in order to keep the troops with the beans, the bullets, and the Band-Aids that they need out in the field. If Senator Reid doesn't want to do that, then I'm shocked that he's going to let that go. The House on the other side, I agree. Nancy Pelosi and Jack Murtha are perfectly ready to cut the beans and the Band-Aids off. You got somebody out there who's wounded in action, and they're going to take away his Band-Aids so that he can't get. No, they are. That's what Nancy Pelosi and Jack Murtha want to do. And
I love it. Only you could send a person in to get shot at and then blame the Democrats for wanting to bring him home and not get shot at.
If they won't supply the money to buy the medical supplies, the food, and the war supplies,
well, the war supplies.
Then what are we talking about?
Look, what we're talking about is a compromise. What even Jack Murtha, who's a determined opponent of this war, is saying is you provide funds that are limited. Just like we did with the Boland Amendment trying to oppose the Contras, you say we will provide funds for the troops that are there, but no more. We will have certain rest periods. People that have been brought for extension after extension of time, 3, 4 tours of duty when they don't want that. National Guard troops who were here to help people in Louisiana after Katrina and instead were sent off to Iraq, you bring them home. You provide funding with restrictions because if they don't do anything, then we know what this president will do. The president doesn't care what the American people think. The president doesn't care about the elections. The president lives in a dream world where he creates facts that aren't true about weapons of mass destruction and connections to al-Qaeda that weren't true, and then brings them about. Now we have connections with al-Qaeda. Thank you, Mr. President.
The president knows that the people of America want to live in a safe, secure, and terror-free world, and that's what he is pursuing in this war to the best of his ability. Now there is disagreement as to whether or not his methodology is the best methodology, but the president wants a safe, secure, and terror-free world, and that's what he's trying to provide for the American people. I think the American people support that goal almost unanimously, except for a few Democratic members of the House.
Safe, secure, and terror-free.
Yes.
Absolutely. We'd like that. You know, we'd also like...
You like it, but I don't think Nancy Pelosi or Jack Murtha likes it.
I think we should give more than a terror-free environment. I think we should give every American $1 billion, give them all their own islands. I think we should give every American, never having to work again. We can do more.
Well, of course, Mark, that would be fiscally irresponsible, so Republicans aren't going to go along with that.
We can't be terror-free. We live in a dangerous world. What we have to do is husband our resources, be fiscally responsible, and direct them to where they most need to go. And the Democrats believe that the guy who attacked and murdered 3,000 innocent Americans, a man you may have heard of, although we don't hear about him very much, his name is Osama bin Laden. Right. We don't talk about him very much.
We talk about him every day.
We should go
hunt for him every day.
We have less than 1/10 of the troops in Iraq out hunting after Osama bin Laden.
Right.
This president has decided that getting sweet oil for American oil companies is more important than going after the guy that murdered 3,000 Americans. For me, to be terror-free, I want to go after the terrorists instead of policing a civil war where Shiites and Sunnis are out to kill each other and our troops are in the middle.
Well, Mark, I'm glad to hear that you want to dedicate the resources towards going after Osama bin Laden. I've heard nobody else in your party talk about dedicating the resources to go after Osama bin Laden.
They talk about Afghanistan. They talk about Osama bin Laden.
But I will tell you, going after Osama bin Laden, that's a special forces thing. You don't want to put battalion after battalion of regular forces in there. The Russians learned that that's not the way to go. You got to put special forces in there there looking for this guy. It's like a needle in a haystack. He's living in a damp hole. It's cold now. He's very uncomfortable and probably dying of some exotic disease. This is real good. He's not harassing us on our turf. No more planes have flown into buildings in the United States, and that's because we have Osama bin Laden on the run, and that's exactly where we're going to keep him, on the run. We may or may not catch him, but we're not going to send in a division of regular forces to go through those mountains looking for him. The Russians learned that's the wrong way to fight a war in Afghanistan.
Mike, Afghanistan is going back to the Taliban in a way that it hasn't before. Pakistan has pretty much said they're off limits. They're not going after Osama bin Laden. We have still people in Louisiana that aren't in their homes. We have more damage in New Orleans than we had on September 11th in New York City. We have Americans and they have needs. And our National Guard troops that should be down rebuilding New Orleans are standing between a Shiite trying to kill a Sunni and a Sunni trying to kill a Shiite. Mike, in the 1980s, 1 million Shiites and Sunnis murdered each other in the Iran-Iraq war. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, yeah, and we should have put 2 million Americans in the middle right there. Sure, we'd lose 1 million American lives, but hey, we would achieve, I don't know, what would we achieve? What are we achieving in Iraq?
Now, see, it's very clever and very cute to say that. But
what are we achieving in Iraq?
But you know that no sane person would have suggested that we get involved in the middle of the Iraq war. In fact, I supported the way we did it.
I'll agree with that.
I supported the way we did it was to play both sides off the middle and let them kill each other and
Why
keep
don't
going.
we do that now?
I thought that was great.
Why don't we do that now?
Because we can't afford to leave the power vacuum in one country. That's the issue right now.
It wouldn't be a vacuum. They're fighting each other.
No.
But here's the problem. The Shiites think, as the majority, they can vanquish the Sunnis. The Sunnis think, I'm not sure why, maybe because of weapons or whatever, support from Saudi Arabia, they think they can win. As long as you have two hostile forces, each thinking they can vanquish the other, a war is going to happen.
But it appears right now that maybe they don't think that. Now, I'm willing to grant you that one vignette, 1 3-4 week period in time, 5-week period in time does not mean a trend yet. But since the president announced his surge, it looks like things are calming down there. The objective of the surge was to calm things down, stop them from slitting each other's throat and bombing each other on a daily basis, give the indigenous government there a chance to establish peace and security and to take over and establish their footprint of power and their footprint of authority, and then let them handle it from there. Right now, Mark, it seems to be working. I'm not willing to bet everything that it is, but I'm surprised that the Democrats are willing to bet everything that it's not.
Nice try, Mike, but you called the government an indigenous government. That's not how it's seen in Iraq. It's seen as a Shiite government. Maliki is seen as in the control of Muqtada al-Sadr and the Shiite death squads. The Sunnis, who hate al-Qaeda, and polls show they hate al-Qaeda, they trust al-Qaeda more than they do their own government. This is not a recipe for a society coming together.
Muqtada al-Sadr, the chicken little, you know, whatever you want to call him, he scammed and ran to Iran. He won't even stick around and fight. His army, his militia seems to be disappearing. They're doing something. Look, now, I'm not willing to tell you that they're defeated yet. But Muqtada al-Sadr cut and run like a little chicken, yellow bird, ran to Iran, sitting there, you know, talking with the boys in Iran. You know, how are we going to do this? The surge right now seems to be working. I'm not willing to bet it, bet that it absolutely
Mike,
will. Don't bet that it won't, Mark. You're going to take it's a bad bet. It's a bad bet.
For 4 years, we've heard it's working. For 4 years, we've heard there's progress. The president said, first he said we've won, right? The mission's accomplished.
We had.
That was a month into the war.
We had.
Then about 2 years later, he would say, well, we're winning. And they're in the last throes. That was, I think, 04 or 05. Cheney said they're in the last throes. And now it's to, well, we're not winning, we're not losing yet. And then soon it'll be, we're not losing yet. And then it'll be, we haven't lost yet. And then it'll be, we've lost. In the meantime, 3,000 Americans are dead. Going on 20,000 are wounded. Hundreds of thousands of Iraqis are dead. They don't want us there. The great majority, the Kurds do, and I've supported staying in Kurdish areas, and I have no problem staying on the borders, withdrawing to the borders, which actually Jack Murtha supports as well.
No, Jack Murtha wants us to go to Okinawa. That's what he said.
Well, okay.
Let's redeploy to Okinawa.
Fine.
Okay,
I'm not going to defend Jack
Murtha.
But the point is that sitting in the middle of a war zone, it doesn't make any sense. We need to help them come together, come to an agreement, and get out.
And if the surge doesn't work in terms of establishing a heavier footprint of security,
come on.
Right. Well, I mean, if you put them all in the same place, though, that's where in Baghdad, where the problem is, then you might have a solution. Mark, I'll say it a third time tonight. I'm not willing to bet the ranch on the fact that this surge is going to work, but the Democratic Party has just bet the ranch that it's not going to work, and if it does, you guys are going to be sitting there as embarrassed and eating as much crow as you can.
When do you give up? The American people have given up. The generals have given up. Former secretaries of state have given up.
The generals have not.
Bush had to do a nice little moving them all around to try to get the ones that agree with the war.
One got promoted.
Colin Powell's given up.
One got promoted to Chief of Staff of the Army. That's a pretty good. General Casey.
Why is Colin Powell wrong to have given up?
I don't think Colin Powell. I don't think
he doesn't support the surge. Why not?
Well, you know, everybody. I'm not saying that it's going to work. You can have a reasonable opinion that the odds are perhaps less than 50-50.
Should Congress be allowed to vote on whether the American people support this surge?
Congress already voted.
The House voted. The Republicans refused to let them vote in the Senate.
Well, you know, that's a Senate rule. I mean, you know, we do this a lot. You know, should the Republicans have been allowed to vote on tax cuts for the American people? The Democrats wouldn't let them.
Well,
can't we just have a vote?
Republicans said we need a nuclear option. Maybe we should discuss that.
Right.
The toll-free number is 888-488-MARK, 888-488-6275. Join in the debate. We want to hear from you. You agree with Mike? You agree with me? You got your own views. Let us know. You can also comment on the blog at radioinsidescoop.com. We'll be right back after this.
History has demonstrated that violence only begets greater violence, and injustice only begets greater injustice. This is not the tradition of our great nation. This is not how we want the United States to be known around the world. We have another tradition that we think ought to prevail. One that is more just and more powerful. There is a better way. If we truly want peace and security, then we must work hard for justice. If you're concerned that we've become a nation whose national policies are grounded in beliefs that are centered on a line embedded in BS, then don't miss Escape from Orwellianation, a talk show in which concerned regular citizens like you and me, not self-serving media spinmeisters, wade through the barrage of newspeak and doublethink that pollutes public discourse today. Big brother, big business, big media, and the big national parties who collude to keep we the people afraid and in the dark would prefer that you not watch. Show them who's in charge. Tune in to Escape from Orwellianation right here on Channel 10.
From Washington, back to the Inside Scoop with Mark Levine.
Welcome back to the Inside Scoop. It is Debate Sunday. I have my guest here, Mike Lane. He's a Republican strategist. I used to work for the Democrats in Congress. We disagree, but we also want to hear from you. The toll-free number is 888-488-MARK. You can also, by the way, comment on the blog at radioinsidescoop.com. Mike, we actually have some comments. If we'll go to the blog right here, radioinsidescoop.com, and as we scroll down, we read that one of my listeners writes, 360 tons of shrink-wrapped $100 bills were flown to Iraq and handed out to warlords, Iraqi contractors, and American contractors. No oversight or accounting. What's this about? Well, Vicki, I think you know what it's about. It's about a government that's out of control. We're handing out $8 billion in cash, 360 tons of cash. I mean, I don't know about you. I sometimes watch the World Series of Poker, and $12 million in cash looks like a lot, but $8 billion is like almost 1,000 times that. Just lost, cash. Oops, I guess someone misplaced it, Mike. How can we trust a government to handle the surge correctly when they can't even keep track of $8 billion in cash?
Well, Mark, first of all, they're not even related. And I'm not going to defend this program. I have to tell you, when I read the article on this, I was appalled myself.
You should be.
There are a lot of times when you need walking around money, street money, not just in politics, but in wars as well, and you make things happen. But $8 billion in essentially, at this point, money that can't be accounted for. It's not to say that they will.
I'll tell you where it is. A bunch of Iraqis took the money, and they're in Paris, they're in Monaco. They may be playing poker with it right now. Well, they're all over the world. I'll tell you where I don't think it is. I don't think it's in Iraq.
I doubt that anybody's in Monte Carlo playing cards with it, but it might be in bank accounts someplace. I mean, there's no doubt that was a gaffe. No, it wasn't an oops. It was worse than an oops. It was a gaffe of unjustifiable proportion. I'm not going to defend it. But just because somebody makes one mistake on something like that doesn't necessarily translate into a military operation with a surge that's going to put a heavier security footprint in the green zone and the other areas where we need it. They're not related, and I'm not going to let you get away with saying that one leads to the other, because it doesn't.
One mistake? Okay. Two mistakes. No weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. Oops, we lied about that to get us to go to war. Third mistake. We said there was a connection with Al-Qaeda. There wasn't, but now there is. Great. That's a third mistake. Fourth mistake. It's not going to cost us anything. The oil will pay for itself. Fifth mistake. Oh, they're going to greet us with roses in the streets. Sixth mistake. Saddam Hussein is seeking nuclear weapons from Niger. That turns out to be a lie. Oops. And seventh mistake, we're fixing the facts around the intelligence. Not just because the British say so, but now even the Inspector General is saying so. It isn't one mistake. It's one mistake after another. And one of the things I find interesting, Mike, is at the beginning of the war, the Democrats, many of them, about half of them, gave the president the benefit of the doubt. People like John Kerry voted for a resolution that said, Mr. President, we don't want you to go to war. But if you can't get Saddam Hussein to allow the inspectors in, if you can't find weapons of mass destruction, then we authorize war as a last resort. And people who think the Democrats voted for the war, they didn't vote for the war. They voted to authorize the war as a last resort. They trusted this president, and they found out that they were wrong. And if they were wrong to trust the president in 2002, after all these mistakes, aren't they wrong to trust him now?
Mark, I didn't think you were a Hillary Clinton fan, and here you are parroting her exact thing as to why she voted for this whole thing.
Great minds think alike.
You can do better than following Hillary Clinton.
I've said this for years.
She's not going anywhere.
Great minds think alike.
She needs to get a better scriptwriter.
Why should they trust this president?
I can rebut each of those things. There's two sides to every story, and each of those 7 points that you brought up, I can rebut them, but that's not the point in being here tonight. Let's talk about what we do from here. And the question...
We bring them home.
Everything that you talked about, all 7 of those points were, if you grant that they were a mistake, and I think there's an argument on the other side for all of them, but if you want to grant that they were a mistake, they were all political mistakes, they were all judgment mistakes, they were not military mistakes. The surge is a military operation.
They were military mistakes.
The question is, can the military create a safe and secure area that will allow the indigenous government to take over, establish their authority, and start to build the country of Iraqis for Iraq. That's the question right now. It's not a matter of whether or not there were weapons of mass destruction in the beginning. Right now is, can the Maliki government, can they actually establish their authority, establish their control, and can they build a country for the Iraqi people that they want that's safe and secure and terror-free?
No, they can't.
Why not?
Because one of the things we should learn about history, or we're condemned to repeat it, and we learned in Vietnam that political mistakes are military mistakes, that the only way to do a counterinsurgency is to have the hearts and minds of the people on the ground. And when the people themselves see that they can't get their crops done, that they're not safe, the Iraqis that could have rebuilt a democratic Iraq, and there were some of them, they've left. They're refugees. They're living in Jordan or elsewhere around the world.
Not all of them.
A lot of them. Most of them.
There's 25 million Iraqis that are
still left in the country. And more than 1 million have left.
And maybe 60,000 of them are involved in, throwing bombs back and forth at each other.
It's too
That leaves
late.
24,940,000 that are peace, law-abiding. They want their country back. 24 million.
I'm sure they do. And I'll tell you something else.
60?
They would prefer to have Saddam Hussein, as evil a dictator as he was, in control because less people died. There was more order. The schools were open.
If their democratically elected government, with our help, can establish a safe and secure authority over the country and bring it back into peace, they'll like that a lot more than they like Saddam Hussein.
The Sunnis don't want to be ruled by the Shiites. The Kurds don't want to be ruled by the Shiites. The Shiites are 60% of the population.
Right.
They're going to control the government. And unless you literally split up the country, which, by the way, Joe Biden, he's a smart guy. And I a lot of times fall where, and I don't always agree with him, but the idea that you need Kurdish autonomy, Sunni autonomy, and Shiite autonomy, we've seen this again and again, Mike. We see it when Yugoslavia had a dictator, Tito, fell apart and led to people fighting each other and genocide. Same thing happened with the Soviet Union. We have a powerful dictator, and then it falls apart in Chechnya and so forth. The people need to have their own autonomy. They need to feel they're in control. The Sunnis don't trust the Shiite government, and for good reason. They work with Muqtada al-Sadr to do death squads.
Okay.
I don't blame them.
Okay, two things on that.
The Sunnis don't trust the Shiites, don't trust the Sunnis either. I don't blame them.
Two things on that. Number one, I'm not going to say you're wrong. It may be indeed that is the ultimate solution. But first of all, you have to accept the fact that more than 90% of the Iraqi people cast a free and fair ballot to keep the country unified. So right now I'm going.
To keep the country unified.
When they adopted
that wasn't on the ballot.
When they adopted the Constitution, that kept the country unified.
They didn't.
Absolutely.
They didn't have a chance to vote on 3 separate states.
Come
on, Mike.
No, they were given a chance.
That Constitution.
They were given a chance to vote yes or no on the Constitution. The
yes
Constitution
or no.
kept it together.
You know what?
And they said
when
yes.
Saddam Hussein ran for election, they could also vote yes or no. When Stalin ran for election, they could also vote yes or no. And 99% voted yes. I wonder why.
You're losing credibility now. You can't compare the elections under Saddam Hussein to the free and fair elections that they had when they adopted their Constitution.
You can't
That's just not
compare
it's not fair.
A U.S. written Constitution where you would vote yes or no to voting among various options, where the people get to choose various options.
The Iraqis wrote their Constitution. We didn't write their Constitution.
We were in control. Why are we there now? Maliki doesn't even want us there. The Sunnis don't want us there. The Shiites there. The government doesn't want us there. We put our thumbprint on Maliki because we hadn't taken enough of the oil yet. We didn't have those oil contracts signed yet. We put our thumb on Maliki and said, hey, Maliki, we need you to ask us to come in. You better ask us.
My great disappointment is that we're not taking more of their oil to pay for what we're spending there, but we're not. And so to accuse us of taking too much of their oil when we're not taking...
It won't go to the U.S. government. It'll go to Exxon and Mobil, and they'll supply money to the Republican Party, and you'll be fine.
Well, I heard that they're, giving a lot of money to you guys, too, these days since you're in control. So they're not dumb.
Not the oil companies. The oil companies are not Democratic Party friends.
They're not dumb.
Let me go somewhere else in the world, because George Bush had this astounding axis of evil quote, and I'd be willing to grant from the outset Iran, Iraq, and North Korea were some of the most dangerous countries in the world. I actually think Iraq was the 3rd most dangerous of the 3. I think it was less dangerous than the other 2. The other 2 were actually developing nuclear weapons. Iraq wasn't, so we invaded the one that wasn't. But obviously they weren't in an axis. They weren't in an alliance. It was a silly phrase because axis implies alliance. But they were 3 dangerous countries. Now, we invaded the least dangerous. We attacked the guy that was no threat to us, that was contained. Meanwhile, North Korea, as you know, developed nuclear weapons. They, in fact, rescinded the agreement that was signed under Bill Clinton. That was not a perfect agreement, but shut down the nuclear facilities of North Korea, allowed inspectors in, was watching them very carefully. Now, what happened? We had North Korea throw out the inspectors, begin nuclear weapons, while we were focused on Afghanistan and Iraq, actually develop the weapons. Interestingly, just this week, there was an agreement signed that goes somewhat back to the Clinton days, though I would argue it's worse than that. I want to discuss that with you after the break. Folks, if you want to call in, toll-free number 888-488-MARK, 888-488-6275. We'll be right back after this.
I, George Walker Bush, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. So help me God.
Let's impeach the president for lying.
My name is David Bell. I am a resident of Virginia's 11th Congressional District, and I ask Representative Tom Davis to initiate or support investigations into violations of the law by President Bush and his administration.
Tom Davis, my name is Jean Reynolds, and I'm one of your constituents. I want you to join immediately with other members of Congress to begin an investigation of the criminal acts that George Bush has committed.
I'm Nick Spengler of Ashland, Virginia, and I would like our troops to come home and Bush to get out of office.
My name is Nancy Maynard. I live in the 11th Congressional District, and this message is for Tom Davis. I'm asking you to please investigate for impeachment.
My name is Bruce Smith. I live in the 11th Congressional District in Woodbridge, Virginia. I want Congressman Davis to support the investigation of President Bush and Vice President Cheney and those that foisted this war on us.
Hello, Congressman Davis. I'm Carrie Plonson from the 11th Congressional District, and I'd like you to take immediate action to investigate George Bush and his offenses in leading this country into a war that's unwarranted and there is no solution for.
We have to impeach. I am just appalled that we would not, quote, waste our time with impeachment. The message to the world has to be that Bush and Cheney are guilty of international war crimes about which we can't do anything. We can do a lot about the crimes committed within the U.S. Constitution.
From Washington, back to the Inside Scoop with Mark Levine.
This is Mark Levine. I'm your host. I used to work for the Democrats in Congress. My guest is Mike Lane, Republican strategist. Before the break, we were talking about North Korea. Now, for the last, 6 years, the Republicans have excoriated the Clinton deal, the deal to allow inspectors in and also to provide some food aid, no question, to the dangerous government of North Korea, but it was in exchange for watching their nuclear weapons. When they kicked out the inspectors, George Bush said, "Don't do that." But nothing happened, and meanwhile, North Korea developed some very horrible nuclear weapons. I'm going to tell you, I support this deal. I don't think it's as good as the Clinton deal, but unfortunately, we're not in as good shape as we were with the Clinton deal because they have more power now because George Bush took his eye off North Korea to focus on Saddam Hussein. What do you think about the deal?
Well, I'm not sure I do support the deal, but I think it's better than the Clinton deal, and I'll tell you why, for two main reasons. Number one, there were two problems with the Clinton deal. Number one, it was bilateral, and we had absolutely, no influence once they decided to break it and cheat. We had no recourse with the international community to go back and see if we could get them back on track. The Bush deal, as you know, is part of the six-party talks. We have now South Korea, we have particularly China, we have Russia, all of them on board with this deal. And so now, if and when North Korea starts to break this and cheat and things like that the way they did before, we have recourse to go back to the entire six-party talks and see if we can get North Korea back in line. The second thing is, and this is what was really wrong with the Clinton deal, everything was up front. I mean, as soon as North Korea got their food, their oil, their fuel, everything they wanted, they felt free to break it right away. The Bush deal, everything is held back. They only get 5% of the fuel that they're promised up front. And within 60 to 90 days, we'll know whether they're breaking it, we'll know whether they're cheating it, we'll know whether or not they're letting the inspectors in, and they don't get the other 95% of the goodies the way they did under the Clinton deal. So these are the two reasons why I think it's a better deal than Clinton's. Now, is it good? I still don't trust Kim Jong-il. I don't trust North Korea. I think they're lying, nasty cheats. I think they're still going to cheat. And I think it's likely that we're going to wind up disappointed with this deal, but at least we're not giving away the store up front.
Wasn't a Republican president, Ronald Reagan, that said trust and verify? Let's not pretend, let's not mess around with history here. You said they cheated on it right away.
Right.
You know that's not true. The deal was signed in 1994. Throughout the entire Clinton presidency, they didn't cheat once. We had inspectors there. We had cameras there. We were watching it. It was only under George Bush, who wasn't watching it, that they kicked everybody out. And one of the things that makes this deal worse than the Clinton deal, though I'm afraid we have to accept it now because they developed the nuclear weapons on George Bush's watch, is we have a bilateral relationship with North Korea. We have never had diplomatic relations with North Korea. We haven't had that dating back to the 1950s in the Korean War. I'm afraid we have to accept this because I think we have fallen further behind, and better to have that than have a nuclear arm to the teeth North Korea. So this deal isn't as good as Clinton's deal, but I'll tell you this. I remember working in Congress in 01, in 02. I was answering the phones. 28 days till North Korea develops nuclear weapons, 26 days. Now, did I know it was going to be on this day? No, I didn't. But I knew it was just around the corner. I knew this president wasn't doing anything about it. The time to stop North Korea from developing nuclear weapons was 6 years ago. This deal is unfortunately the best we can get today. But had Bush acted in 01 and 02, we wouldn't be where we are today.
Well, as I said, it's a better deal because it's not bilateral, it's multilateral.
It is bilateral.
It's the six-party talks.
This thing was decided in Berlin. You know that.
And then they brought it over. And Russia on this. You know that.
Yeah, but they decided the deal in Berlin between negotiators of the United States and North Korea, and then they brought it over for the ceremony in Japan.
Mark, help me out here. I can never understand why the Democrats always thought we should not have multilateral talks.
I support the deal.
No, help.
I'm just telling you, it's the best we could possibly get out of a bad situation that this president caused.
Help me out. Why it always seems
your party doesn't support the deal.
In Korea, well, elements of the Republican Party do not support it. You're
That's
exactly right.
I know that.
Why is it that the Democrats always wanted bilateral talks? Multilateral talks will never work with Korea. We need to bilateral. We need to engage them personally. And in the Middle East, it's always got to be, we need multilateral talks. We don't want to have any bilateral things.
It's not about
what
the
is
size
the
of the table. All right? I don't care whether it's a circle or a rectangle or a triangle
but
or an octagon.
I don't understand.
Look, the idea is to get whatever we need to get.
Right.
All right? And with North Korea, I think it's great that China and Russia are on board. I told you, I've praised the deal. I don't think it's as good as Bill Clinton's deal because you know what? Now they have nuclear weapons. And now they can take them from the Yongbyon nuclear plant and they've probably hidden them away somewhere. So the deal, unfortunately, under Bill Clinton, they didn't have those nuclear weapons. We were watching them all.
Well,
it's not as, but we have no choice now.
As
Other than going to war, we have no choice. It's the best deal we can get.
No, absolutely not. As you know, this is an ongoing process. The president has said this is only step one in the deal. The negotiations, the talks will continue. We will continue to encourage and engage North Korea to get rid of their weapons.
And take them off the terrorist list, which is much worse than the Clinton deal.
No, we'll never take them off the terrorist list.
That's what it says. That's what the deal says.
Well, like I said, I don't support every part of this deal.
Well, like I said, it's the best we can get after George Bush messed it up. Let me move on to the third part of the axis of evil. And this comes from the web, because we've got a person here that writes. They call themselves Stop the Traitors right here on the blog at radioinsidescoop.com. They write, "Can you feel it? The neocons are creeping toward a diversionary confrontation with Iran. They are disclosing info about Iranian subversion in Iraq, known since 2004, but are revealing it now. Haven't we seen this scenario play out before?" How do you respond to our listeners?
Well, if the listener is asking, is military action against Iran imminent? Are we going to essentially take the surge force and make a right turn and go straight to Tehran? The answer is no, it's not going to happen.
Instead of saying what you think the listener is saying, let's look at their actual words. What they're saying is, hey, we've known since 2004 there's been Iranian subversion in Iraq. Why are we just now revealing it now? That's his question. Let's just take it on its face. What does that mean?
Well,
why do you think that is? Because I have my own.
Well, I don't think it's just being revealed now. I think it's been common knowledge that that Iran has been messing around in Iraq for 3 years.
So why this week did the president make a big deal out of it where he hasn't for the past 2 years, 3 years? Why?
Well,
Why do you think?
I think they have the absolute evidence now. You have the pieces of the bombs that you can reassemble. You have the markings that it was clearly done in Iran.
First of all, what evidence do we have? We know it was Iranian weapons.
You have tracing it back to the Iranian army. So
No, you don't have those traces.
No, we do.
We know that they're Iranian
weapons.
weapons.
General Pace said we did. We have it traced back to the Iranian military. We don't have it traced back to
the government
Ahmadinejad itself.
To the government.
But we have it traced back to their army.
I have no doubt that Iran's there. Iran is in Iraq. Iran is in Lebanon doing horrible things. Iran is helping the Palestinians do awful things. Iran is in many ways doing more damage than the Soviet Union did at one time. It is a very dangerous power. I don't dispute that.
I'll tell you what I would do now. If knowing what I know, I would ratchet up the diplomacy on Iran, and I would say, whether or not you knew this, it's time to stop it, and we want to see that it's stopping, and if it doesn't, then you're going to pay the price. And
isn't the right way to go multilateral, just as with North Korea, to use the Europeans, to go and do sanctions, to get the United Nations?
No, because Americans are dying in the battlefield as a result of this. No, it's not the same
thing.
Americans are dying in the battlefield.
That's unfair.
We need to take action to support them and to protect them right now.
That's unfair. Americans are dying in the battlefield 90%. Because Shiite Iraqis are killing Sunni Iraqis, and Sunni Iraqis are killing Shiite Iraqis, and they're both trying to kill the Kurds. That's why 90% are dying. I'll give 5% to Al-Qaeda and 5% to Iran, but what they're doing is basically fueling a native conflict. In fact, it's very similar, North Vietnam and South Vietnam. Yeah, the Soviet Union was over here, the United States were over here, but the people themselves were fighting amongst themselves. Iran is throwing gasoline on a fire. I'll grant you that. But the fire has been burning and is largely burning because we took out the stable dictator Saddam Hussein and allow these things to go. So to say, well, Iran is causing American troops to die, American troops are dying because of our mistakes in Iraq. All Iran is doing is making a bad thing worse.
No, the fire is not burning because we took out a stable dictator. The fire started to burn about 10 months ago when they had the big bomb attack on that sacred mosque, and that started the sectarian violence, which then escalated.
Our mistake was not knowing that was coming. After Yugoslavia, after the Soviet Union, we should have known this.
Okay, whether or not we knew it was coming, our mistake then was compounded by not surging the troops in then and putting a security footprint on the area so that the insurgencies couldn't get started. Once they got started, then they went out of control. We made a lot of mistakes saying, well, we think it's this, we think it's that. We found out, the president found out, no, that's not the case. So what did the president do? He said, okay, I am going to reestablish order, I'm going to reestablish law, I'm going to reestablish security and give them a chance to make this happen. Now,
do you know whose fault it is?
You never gave me, let's go back to Iran. What would I do if I was the president in Iran right now? I'll tell you, I'm a little bit more hawkish than he is. I would find a couple of their munitions factories and I'd drop a big bomb on them. And I would say, okay, you can't keep these munitions that are being made in your factory out of our theater. Then, okay, kaboom! There goes your munitions theater, your munitions factory.
So a pretext for war.
Not war. No, I wouldn't move the troops in there. I wouldn't move the troops in there. I would take out a few of their factories.
There are Iranian weapons in Iraq. That's true.
Right.
You know what? You know where?
They have the capability of stopping them.
You know where Osama bin Laden has some of his weapons from? The Mujahideen. From the United States.
Right.
The United States supplied arms that Osama bin Laden is using today. The United States is the enemy. Let's bomb Washington.
No.
How can you say that just because Iranian weapons are there, we have American weapons
because they have the ability to stop it. We can't get our American weapons
We don't even know that they're supplying them right now.
Well, we know it comes from their army. We know it comes from their army. We haven't traced that far.
Osama bin Laden's weapons came from our army.
Ahmadinejad
are you ready to bomb New York?
Ahmadinejad can stop it anytime he wants. And if he doesn't stop it, then he's got to pay a price.
We haven't proved that he's doing it. Again, you're jumping war first, proof later.
We don't know that he's doing it, but we know he's not stopping it. And he has the power to stop it.
No, he doesn't.
Yes, he does.
Well, if he
runs that country like any dictator ever does.
Mike, do we have the power to take the American weapons out of Osama bin Laden's hands?
You can't go to the market in that country without permission. Okay.
Can we take our American weapons from Osama bin Laden?
No, we can't.
Then how can we expect Ahmadinejad to remove Iranian weapons from the Shiite Iraqis?
No, the ones that are there, we can't expect that. But we can expect him not to let any more over the border.
Fine, but do we know he's doing it? Is there any proof that he's doing it?
We know he's not stopping it. We know he's not stopping it.
I don't know, but I think we need some proof before we go to war. Right. Let me go to Freddie Morales in Annandale. Welcome to the Inside Scoop.
Hello, Mark. How are you?
I'm doing good.
This is my first-time caller.
Glad to have you call. What are your thoughts on our debate?
All right. You've been naming Iran a lot of times. And Iran, he just came from Venezuela, where he signed a big pact over there. He just came from Bolivia, where he signed with President Evo Morales over there.
Yeah.
I mean, but we don't have to go very far away from here because they are already in the hemispheric too, and it's very dangerous.
I agree it's dangerous. What do you think we should do, Freddie?
Well,
it's tough, but there's no easy answer, is there?
Everything is connected now. But they know that we are in the Bible situation now.
Right.
That war over there, Afghanistan and Iraq and Iraq, is hurting us a lot, and they're going to take opportunities, know.
It's true. Thank you for your call, Freddie. I appreciate it. I mean, Freddie's right. We're in a dangerous situation. Iran is a dangerous country. Let me suggest to you, Mike, that because we went to war in Iraq, Iran is more powerful and more dangerous than it has ever been. And of course, when I say Iran, I don't mean the Iranian people, who actually I think don't like their government. I mean the Iranian government. In the 90s, they were bad, but they couldn't do the damage that they're doing now. And in fact, if we just left good old weak dictator Saddam Hussein and kept protecting the Kurds in the north and kept the no-fly zone and kept the inspectors there, you have to admit, in hindsight, we'd be a lot better off.
Well, I'm perfectly willing to negotiate with multi-party talks over there. Let's get the Jordanians, the Saudis, other countries involved in this whole thing. And let's see if we can bring Iran back into the international community before we need to take action.
And I think we can do that.
But I'm not.
I think that's not out of the question.
I'm not willing to wait years. I'm not willing to wait years. It's just they're too dangerous and they're way out of control, and they need to be, as they develop these nuclear weapons, at which they flatly proclaim they're developing. We need to.
I agree. We have to take action.
We need to stop it before they do it.
I agree. We have to take action, but without having any proof that the government is still supplying weapons, to go in and bomb them, I don't think that's the right answer.
Well, we need to. They need to prove that they will stop it. That's the test right there.
You know,
they need to stop it.
Proving
it's not
a
about
negative.
the ones in there.
It's just proving a negative that's got to stop. That's what we said about Saddam Hussein. He said, "I don't have any weapons of mass destruction." We said, "Prove that you don't have weapons of mass destruction." You can't prove that I don't have weapons of mass destruction. I don't. Don't take me to Guantanamo Bay. But you can't prove it. You cannot prove a negative. You cannot say to him, prove that you're not helping.
You know what? A couple months in Gitmo would do us both good.
No! I don't like orange. I don't want the jumpsuit. No! No! And related to that,
beautiful down there.
Related to that, I want to go back to the blog because this is exactly the problem. We have Republicans.
Vacation paradise, Guantanamo Bay.
Cuba, maybe. We have Republicans that are taking legitimate disagreements among people in a democratic society. Let's go to the blog and saying that it's wrong. Here, democracy only works. The listener writes. This is N. Kagan writes on the blog, and he writes that democracy only works if people agree to it knowingly and willingly. Maybe that is the reason there are people in our society, in our country, that are trying to divide us. Keep us in fear as a way to control us. Fear to be called an enemy of the people. Fear to be called unpatriotic, un-American. Fear of terrorism. Fear of thy neighbor. It's a problem. We're going to take a break. When we come back, I want you to address this question, and we'll also get to a caller on the line. 888-488-MARK. We'll be right back after this.
On the dial.
But it's much more than that.
It's the voice of the people.
People like you.
Your neighbors, your friends,
or your family.
People who want to share ideas,
opinions,
cultures,
lifestyles,
art,
sports, music,
events, entertainment,
history,
science,
beliefs.
People who want to learn about television,
producing,
directing,
cameras, audio,
lighting,
editing, or radio, talk, music.
Whatever you think people should hear.
Public access is the place where everyone has a voice.
And it's the place where that voice gets heard.
A place where you can create your own form of personal expression.
So what do you want to say?
Whatever it is,
you can say it here.
Because we're public access.
For the people.
By the people.
It is about balancing our choices between the gray of the concrete jungle and the stunning beauty of the real one, between a stoic facade of granite and the fury of the canyon. It's why there's EarthShare, the simple way to find balance. EarthShare is the workplace giving program bringing the leading environmental groups under one umbrella. Support EarthShare, support them all. EarthShare. Please ask your employer about workplace giving. To learn more, visit our website.
Thousands of kids in this country have everything it takes to go to college, except the money. The United Negro College Fund. A mind is a terrible thing to waste.
From Washington, back to the Inside Scoop with Mark Levine.
Back to the Inside Scoop. I'm debating the issues of the day and with my guest, Mike Lane. And Mike, on the blog at radioinsidescoop.com, N. Kagan writes that people are trying to use fear to control us. Now, you said earlier on, at the very beginning of this broadcast, you said, some Democrats don't want a terror-free world. Now, I know you were, I think you were just joking, but there is this element of the Republican Party that is taking legitimate debate, legitimate disagreement over whether we should be in Iraq or not, and really going too far, calling the opponents of the war unpatriotic. Can you agree with me and with N. Kagan that that goes too far?
That goes too far. I mean,
the Democrats want a terror-free world. We disagree on how to get there.
Let me clarify what I think I was saying in the beginning of the program.
Okay.
I don't think I said it exactly the way you just quoted me, and if I did, I apologize for it, because that's not what I meant. What I meant is that some Democrats don't want to do what's necessary, in my opinion, to create a terror-free world.
We disagree on how to get there.
Right.
But obviously, we all agree on the same goals.
Right.
Let me go to the phones. We've got Akbar from Falls Church. Akbar, welcome to the Inside Scoop. Do we still have Akbar from Falls Church on the line? I hope we do.
Yes.
Oh, yes, there you are.
Hi.
Hi. You have a comment, a question? Did we lose Akbar? That's too bad.
Oh.
Akbar, I hope you'll call back. We still have a little bit of time. Before Akbar calls back, though, I want to switch topics to two other issues going on in Washington. One is the Libby trial. I'll get to that in a minute. I want to talk about this U.S. attorney thing because I don't think most people have even heard of this story, and I want to give them the inside scoop from Washington. Basically, U.S. attorneys are federal prosecutors, and they're all around the country. They're in every state. They're appointed by the president, but they're confirmed by the Senate. So they have, both branches of government have to have a role.
In fact, there's 100 some odd of them total, or I mean, it's not just one in every state. I mean,
no, there's a U.S. attorney, there's a deputy U.S. attorney.
But I mean, there's a U.S. attorney in Virginia, for instance, where we are. There's an Eastern District and a Western District. In California,
so there's probably
my
a
guess
couple
is,
hundred.
In California, right?
Well, California has 4 districts, so anyway,
so there's a couple hundred.
In any case. 7 were just fired. And they were fired for political reasons. Now, what's interesting is that the Deputy Attorney General of the United States, number 2, after Gonzales, Paul McNulty, told a Senate panel that 6 of the 7 had been dismissed for performance-related reasons. Turns out that's false. It just came out, in fact, that, that of the 7, only 1 had performance-related problems. The other 6 had 0 negative job evaluations. 4 of them, however, were targeting Republican politicians or their supporters, including the one in San Diego who was prosecuting Republican Congressman Duke Cunningham for bribes. Connected with this is a little thing they snuck into the reauthorization of the Patriot Act. If I'd been there working in the Judiciary Committee, they wouldn't have gotten it past me. I guess some of my colleagues missed it. Sorry, fellow Democrats. But they snuck in a provision that says that if these jobs are empty, the Attorney General can appoint someone for life, can appoint someone until the next president's there, can get around the Senate authorization. The way the law had been written is if no one's there for 120 days, a judge appoints the person. So first of all, do you agree with this change in the law, which obviously I don't? And number 2, can I get you to condemn this obvious politicization of our nation's crime fighters?
Well, let's take the second part first, Mark. We don't know that it's an obvious politicization of the crime fighters. As you point out, 4 of the 7 maybe were prosecuting, among other things, some politician that might know something or something like that. They haven't been able to draw a connection to that causal effect yet.
Sure they have.
So, well, I disagree.
Well, I mean, Karl Rove has admitted he tried to get his own guy in Arkansas.
But let's talk about who these guys are. They're appointed by the president. These people serve at the pleasure of the president. When
if they hadn't changed the law, then you'd have a proposal where if the president and the Senate are at loggerheads, the courts, the 3rd branch of government, steps in. Now the Republicans are filibustering to change the law back to the way it's been for decades.
But the people
do you support the change of the law?
The people who are no longer there are people who were appointed by the president in the first place.
Moderate Republicans.
Do you think
moderate Republicans?
Do you think if the president didn't like the job the Attorney General was doing, that he wouldn't be able to say, "Okay, you're out of here. I'm appointing a new one"?
These are moderate
This is not
Republicans.
This is not news.
This
is the way it goes.
They changed the law so that you don't have Senate consent anymore. And then they fire all these guys. Can we agree at least the law should be changed the way back?
But the Senate voted on that.
I want to get to the call. I want to get to the callers. But before I do, can we agree the law should be changed the way back?
I don't know enough about it. I'm not going to cede that one to you. But I will say that it's not a bad thing to have them originally confirmed by the Senate.
I got 2 callers I need to get to. First, Akbar from Falls Church. We lost you before. Please make your comment. Oh, he's holding. I'm sorry. We're going to do Pete from Reston first. Pete, welcome to the Inside Scoop.
Yeah, I'm just interested in the collective dumbness of Republicans. It blows my mind. Now, you're complaining about weapons from Iran. Perhaps 120 American soldiers have died from weapons from Iran. That's less than have been killed by friendly fire. I want to know, where is it written the United States can put weapons in Iraq that kill 600,000 or 700,000 civilians, but Iran can't supply weapons that kill 120 soldiers. I don't want any of our soldiers dead. You know, what I'd like to see is Bush, Cheney, and their children on the front line. Then this war would be over. You know, we got Cheney, the draft dodger, and Bush, the
draft dodger.
Yeah, another draft dodger. But the point is, why complain about 120 Iranian weapons when we've got, you know, hundreds of thousands of people have died, mostly, you know, innocent people, from American weapons.
Pete, you make some great points. I have to cut you off because we're running out of time. Mike, respond to Pete.
Pete, do you have a serious argument when you sit there and you tell me that you want to put the president and his daughters on the front line in a war zone?
What he's saying is
he's just not a serious caller.
No, he is a serious
he's
caller.
not a
What
serious
he's saying
caller.
is the only member of the Senate that has a child in Iraq right now is Virginia Senator Jim Webb. Okay, the Republicans are putting these people that most of the people that join the military are poor, are looking for an education. They don't have the opportunities that Democrats want to give them.
Mark,
they're in the military. They join the National Guard. They want to help their homes, and they're sent over to Iraq.
Most of the people that join the military do for altruistic reasons.
They do it for all kinds of reasons.
They're patriotic, and they want to go out and they want to defend their country. That's why they're in the military. It's not because they're poor.
Well,
it's not because they
Bush
can't get a
and Cheney
job.
weren't those people. And they, at that time, there was a draft. They ran from the draft. The point is, you have chicken hawks. You have privileged people sending unprivileged people off to war. And in my view,
we have duly elected decision makers, including the Congress that voted fairly overwhelmingly to pursue this war, including Hillary Clinton.
They voted to authorize the president.
Including Hillary Clinton, no matter how she wants to, twist her own vote, she voted for the war.
She didn't. She voted as a last resort to authorize. If there had been a smart president, we never would have gone to war.
When people call up and say,
I want to get to Akbar, but real
it's not
quick.
a serious comment.
It is a serious comment because his question is, how can we blame blame Iran for 120 GIs dead when American arms have been used to kill so much more?
Because as you pointed out, they're fanning the fire. We're trying to put the fire out, and they're throwing gasoline on the fire.
We don't even know that.
That's unacceptable.
We're throwing our own gasoline on the fire. Akbar from Falls Church, welcome back. I'm glad you're here this time.
Thank you.
I lost you before. Make it quick, though, because we're running out of time. Go ahead.
Just two important points. One of them is we're in Iraq. We should be coming out somehow. We should find a way of an exit, you know. That's the first important point that you guys are not talking about. The second thing is there are two issues. One of them is China. China in the future is going to be a challenge for the United States, and so is Russia. Don't forget Russia. You guys are not talking about those two issues.
Okay. Thank you, Akbar, for your call. I agree with him that, one, we need to find a way out of Iraq, and two, that China and Russia are big issues. I promise, Akbar, if you'll listen to my show, if you'll come on every Sunday night at 6:30 and Mondays at 7, if you'll listen to my radio show, which is 2 to 3 p.m. on radioinsidescoop.com, got to put in a plug there, I will talk. I've done stories on both China and Russia, and I think it's about time that I do another one, so I think it's a point well taken. Mike, China and Russia do remain threats.
China and Russia remain very serious threats. We are engaging them. We are working with them. As far as the exit strategy from Iraq is concerned, yes, we do need an exit strategy. No, I'm not one of those who thinks that the total strategy or the total solution is military, but I can tell you if you do what Senator Clinton or Congressman Murtha want to do, which is to pull the military out, you've got no diplomatic leverage without the military piece of it.
Mike, in Vietnam, the war went on and on and on and on, and the Republicans said, just give us 2 more years, give us 1 more year. How many years do you think we need to be in Iraq before we finally say, you know what, we're not succeeding? 07, 08, 09?
You know what, Mark?
What do you think?
President Nixon solved the Vietnam problem. He Vietnamized the war. He trained and equipped the Vietnamese forces to do their things. They were holding fine until 1974 when the Congress cut by 50% the aid we were giving to South Vietnam.
So we won the war in Vietnam. Really?
And within a year, South Vietnam collapsed after the Democrats in the government cut the funding out.
Our time is
That's
up.
what happened.
Is there a deadline? 10 years in Iraq? 15 years? Is there a deadline?
Whatever it takes to win.
So 25 years, 50 years.
I'm good for that.
You know, in my view, containment was always the strategy. That's how we defeated the Soviet Union. We never had to invade Moscow. We should have considered
it's
that
too important to leave before the job's done.
You know what? This president can't do the job. Why we need a new president. That's it for the Inside Scoop. Don't miss it. RadioInsideScoop.com.